All right. Well, it looks like it's just us chickens. Um, Basically, I think what we were kind of trying to do to for this meeting was to kind of identify a location to put content and kind of maybe an initial set of content. And I think I have two kind of answers to that. One, like GitHub Markdown, I think would be nice, but to the best of my knowledge, we still don't have a GitHub repo, so that would be a little harder. Also, some of the people who are going to be maybe working with us may not be that familiar with GitHub. So I was going to kind of propose that maybe we just start with the Google Drive that we kind of already have from whatever you call it, from where like the initial doc was put, because I guess like CNCF has kind of made us a Google Drive location, and I believe it is been pinned, I can't talk, in the Slack channel. Yes, here it is. And I'll throw it in the chat though, so I get captions. All right, I think that is it.
I think we can pretty trivially just get a GitHub org blessed by the CNCF. I mean, we can just go set that up ourselves. And then
so we requested it, but they haven't done it yet.
I see. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think we don't have to have one or the other. I think we can have one that kind of links
elsewhere
and then just put all the
yeah, totally. I was thinking, but I was just kind of like, let's at least have some place to kind of get started. And then once the GitHub repo is an option, we can figure out where a better place to put things is. And is so from the notes from last time, I can't remember what terminology we were using exactly, but we were saying kind of like, oh, we should actually be taking notes from this time. So the notes are here, and the this. Okay. Zoom is like killing my computer today. I don't know what's going on. So I'll just fill in you folks. And all right, so I'm just going to make a folder. I was kind of thinking, like, what was the term we were using? Like
modules.
Yeah, like that. I thought we had a better word than module, though. And I'm very bad at naming things. Yeah. Let's say.
I've seen module used a lot in the educational, like the CCSC community. That seems to be a pretty common term. So if those are the people that we're hoping to look at this, then that will probably not confuse them.
Right.
So educational modules or something like that might be a good folder name.
Oh, I like educational better. Yeah, so I just made a directory called educational. Didn't type that. Modules, and then in there, what I was kind of thinking is just throw a doc that is essentially like agenda is not the right word. Targeted list or something.
Yeah, and from my experience, there's some things that the modules all sort of need to have to get adopted. And also we need to make certain things clear before people, because having a list, especially if it grows, then it will be, there's work that has to be done for people to look through it to figure out what they could use. So in general, we need to have learning objectives, and like a brief description of the modules and like what type they are, about how long they'll take, any setup or like cost, or do you need an account on AWS, or does like things like this? Is it something the students can themselves do as a lab?
Yeah, hold on.
And then you need.
I'm trying to take notes in the doc.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying I'm trying to take notes in the doc, and I'm not as fast a typist as you are, speaker. So oops. So I was just kind of making a template. So here's the doc I'm working in. And I was starting to make a template for each one. Must be nice if I knew how to use my computer today.
Yeah.
And basically time, commitment to completion.
There's any prerequisites that anybody needs to have, which could include things like this. Some of them, like from what I've seen other groups do, sometimes there's no lecture time. Sometimes there's exercises people do, sometimes there's lectures and other stuff like it, but and then there's like an assessment component. This is also something that a lot of schools and educators are going to require, is some way to assess like how effective this is and did people learn things. A lot of instructors who have more freedom from their school won't really care, but there are people whose schools are pretty pedantic.
Yeah, are like more tightly managed.
And even inside of a school, like there can be a faculty member who owns a course and others who are sort of allowed to teach it, but within certain parameters. And so, right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but oh, and these are both.
Oh, I liked cost too. Actually, what did we say?
This should all really be free, to be honest, if we're asking people to do them, because I think the chance that they'll do something that isn't free is almost zero.
Right.
Excuse me.
Oh, did you do suggesting mode?
So in general, yeah, and we might be missing something, but this is general stuff we have to have. So if we're going to take in materials and stuff, I really think it needs to have all of this, and it needs to be thought out well, especially the first like few of these, because I think, once again, if an instructor comes here and looks at this and is like, well, you know, the learning objective doesn't match the kind of thing that would be a learning objective in my courses. It's, you know, more of like a different style or different type, then they may tune out.
Right.
So if we're targeting computer science departments, which I assume we probably are, we would do this in a different way than if we were targeting CIS slash, you know, like sort of tech schools.
Wait, say that last part again. If they're targeting CS departments, it would need to be what?
The kind of outcomes and objectives and the way in which it's done would be different than if it's like a technical training school, like a 2-year college that's focused on, you know, vocational training.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, to give an example, if you take a networking class at, you know, a computer science department, you'll learn a lot of detailed things about how flow control works, and you'll learn about different aspects of routing and, you know, from a much higher level perspective. So you'll understand, you know, the principles behind them. So if someone comes out with a new algorithm for one of these technologies, you sort of already understand how it works and why it works. If you're at a technical school, you learn how to configure a Cisco PIX, you know, firewall to enable certain ports of traffic, and how to set up BGP given this, that, and the other thing. And so your skill is
Right.
immediately useful now to do, you know, router setup, whereas a computer science student is not. But you probably need to retrain every 5 years or else you're obsolete. One thing I think we could do, are you going to be at Chicago, the KubeCon in Chicago?
I am planning to be. I'm like 95%.
You could try to, I'm pretty sure we could get like a birds of a feather session or something somewhere on the calendar.
Oh,
Maybe
that's
at
a good idea.
and then see who comes. Try to get as many students as we can also. And we can use that to figure out what sort of institutions the students who come to these kind of events are at. And then that can help us figure out if, you know, if it were just kind of you and I for our institutions, I think we would want computer science only materials because that's really what we teach. But it may be that there's much more of a mix than we think.
Right.
And getting that idea, and it's not that we have to stay with that mix. You know, we can try to attract people from the other groups, but at least having some idea of who's already there could be very helpful. And some of the students, by the way, are often very active advocates. Like they want to start a Kubernetes chapter at their school or whatever. And so we can use that as a way to get out and get into their curriculum too, is to have them work with the faculty, and then we can establish relationships with their faculty like that to use a module in a class or do something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I just threw that on the action items for the notes. That's something that maybe Catherine can help us with, or I can help with. Do you not have Priv? Like you can just do direct edits. You don't need to do suggest unless you don't have Priv for some reason.
Say again? Can I?
Do you not
Oh,
have
no, I don't
privileges
have
or?
access to it. I have
Oh,
only
weird.
suggest access. So
Okay.
however it's shared doesn't let me do it. But if you think you've changed that in the last couple, I might need to refresh.
Nope. I figured out the dealio. All right. I will change that.
Even for trade school graduate, I would say, because I've been trying to learn all this stuff without the computer science background, it will really help to have a computer science, the graduate level courses related to this topic, cloud native, to be listed on what those and which one to take, what's the relationship dependencies. So for someone who is trade school graduate who want to get into computer science, they can start reading before deciding to go to a computer science school even.
So do you mean like is that the same as prereqs or do you mean something before that?
For example, container technology, for example, which computer science course usually teach about container versus like virtual machine?
Usually operating systems, cloud computing, sometimes even security classes will teach that. I teach it in the introductory security class, but they've probably seen some of that in operating systems, cloud computing, maybe application security, but the core ones are operating systems in like a cloud security class.
Typical courses appropriate. Something like that appropriate for this module. I need some better wording.
Yeah, and if you have a distributed systems class, that effectively has become cloud computing in most institutions.
Right.
So, I don't know. Maybe Langdon, when you went through school, it was that way. But when I went through school, we did, it had parallel and distributed systems, and the word cloud hadn't been invented at that point. So,
100%. Yes. it had not been invented yet. I remember being very excited about the launch of AWS. When it was EC2 and it was command line only.
Yep. That's all you needed.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
If I'm a trade school graduate, after 3 years of experience, I may want to take the operating system, introduction to operating system to understand container versus virtual machine versus WebAssembly. And then after that, I might be interested in learning even ISA, right? Instruction set architecture to understand, because that's and compiler. And maybe on the other hand, I want to do cloud computing design. Then I want to learn about distributed systems. So, but how are those courses currently structured? Which got taught first, and which one I have to take first before the next one? I think
that'll depend a little on the school, but there tends to be a general flow. Like operating systems, there's usually some kind of, anyway, you should look at an individual school, but usually there's some kind of low-ish level programming, basic architecture of systems class that's required around sophomore or junior year. And but a graduate level, or sorry, a complete course only on operating systems is sometimes required, sometimes optional, and is often a senior level class. And they may not get to things like virtualization until they get to that course. It's, I think, a required class in probably like 66 to 80% of universities, but Sometimes they also allow you to take something like compilers instead as an option. So it's one or the other.
I mean, to be honest, right, this
But yeah,
exact problem that you're describing is why universities get so anxious about accepting credits from other universities, because like where these pieces are kind of taught varies a lot by, you know, kind of any given department, right? Because it's, you know, like we haven't just kind of deleted all the old courseware and then started over again with, you know, in the kind of new modern kind of cloud first world. So there, I think because it's kind of fitting into other things, and you want to also, a lot of the times, right, you also want to teach a lot of the background, you know, so, you know, you want to teach the algorithms, but do you teach, you know, like Raft or something in an algorithms class, or do you teach it in a distributed systems class, or do you teach it in a cloud computing class? You know, like, I mean, maybe not the best, I probably wouldn't put that in an algorithms class, but you get my idea. It's like different universities, different departments are going to do it differently, partially even just based on the humans who are teaching, because they, you know, one of them might know that area better than another. So I added a section called kind of typical courses, that, you know, this might slot into. So I'm wondering though if that might be the same answer for every one of these modules, but
I don't think so. I mean, I think there are things you could do that are kind of cool that you could show as a demonstration, even to high schoolers, about something neat, about like
right.
for them to understand concepts like scaling and you know, management and stuff like basically why the cloud can scale and how things work and stuff like that. If you want to go at a really high broad brush level, that might be appropriate for like an intro freshman class to computer science to get them excited about the field. You you could imagine having a module on something like that. And that would fit into almost any course, but probably not like a graduate level cloud computing course. It's probably too easy for that. Um, so yeah, I think it's fine to say that because there will be at least some of that. And there will be quite a few things that I could imagine people will want to do some course or something on that are under the purview of the CNCF that would be specific to like a security class. Um,
Mhm.
and you know, so if you have a cloud class that has security in it, then yes, but most of the time you don't because it's such a broad topic already to do cloud. But if you're coming the other direction, you might add those concepts in.
Yeah, so I added a components to try to capture some of that. And also a target audience under requirements. Oh, I think it's starting to look pretty good. I mean, obviously we can add to it. You all reading, or am I here alone? You look.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
I missed the
It's
last
just, Zoom periodically just decides it doesn't want me to hear anything anymore.
Sorry, what was the last part?
Basically I was just kind of saying, I think this template's looking pretty good. I think we need to add a kind of what is this document, who's it for? And then kind of at the end, I have the kind of list of proposed modules.
It sounds good. I
And
think we actually should do 1 or 2 of these, even if we don't have all the content, and just see if we think we're missing anything.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it's a good start, but I would, it's definitely a draft, So what I would kind of suggest is, do you, you or Victor, have like a module you would propose?
Yeah, I don't. So for me, um, I think that's also. I mean, as a student, I think over the years, I find like learning is really person specific. There are people who are really into the details, and there are people who are really into just kind of learn it for fun, which is me. So I I'd like basically Stanford's open loop concept to if I can go back to school. For example, if I go back to school and wanted to take a security course, I'll probably go to Justin's, to learn about security in a particular area. So it's open. I mean, the cloud native world is so broad, right? So it includes almost everything. So that's the question: what's the goal for this? Is this to train a PhD student in the future in a particular research area, or is more for people who want to come out and immediately have opportunity to work for the big cloud providers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Oracle.
They will definitely hire PhD students, or people who take graduate level classes. I think there's more. I would even say they prefer people who have graduate education, but I wouldn't say they necessarily always prefer PhD students directly. So I think, yeah, but I think we could come up with a couple of module examples here. I think Langdon, you had a nice description of different types of virtualization and what makes containerization new.
Oh, right. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
I think that's not probably that dissimilar from from a series I have in my computer security class when I teach about access control. So I certainly think you could, that would be something to write up. But mine is only briefly touches on sort of containers. It's just sort of because it's more trying to, I'm going to spend time talking about the JVM. I'm going to spend time talking about Rust. I'm going to spend time talking about WebAssembly. I'm going to spend time talking about a lot of these different technologies. And so I just don't have if I were teaching operating systems, I think I could spend 10 slides on containerization, but I can sort of spend 2 slides. So it's sort of my materials are probably not cloud native enough to really fit here. But if there were materials available that were cool and interesting and stuff, I could point students to it, especially if they can, do something on their own and they can actually see the fact that they can run hundreds of containers easily on their laptop, and then they try to run, hundreds of VirtualBox instances, and it dies after about 6. And they say, okay, they can sort of see the difference and understand a bit why. That might be interesting.
Right. Yeah, as long as one of those containers isn't Zoom.
I think it also depends
Yeah,
on the. Sorry, I think it
I was
also
just gonna
depends on
say, I
the.
think it would be cool to demo. It would be cool to demo, like, hey, here's you running 3 VMs and now your machine's tanking, right? And here's you running 100 containers, and that seems to be okay. Which would be that would be a good demo. But
Yeah, I think it also depends on the technology, I guess. So, for example, if you get a deep learning PhD 20 years ago, it's probably not so easy to find a job in a big cloud provider. But now it's everybody wanted deep learning PhD. So maybe the Gartner, the hype cycle can be used as kind of a reference to see, because depend on the subject, right? If the subject is close to reality, maybe there's more practical use everybody want to learn. Whereas if it's still far down the road, it might be just training PhDs basically.
yeah, like I said to a group of students yesterday, about how many people are excited about blockchain, and all of them were not, because hype cycle has passed it by finally. Yeah, so I think that's true, but I also think we got to be careful of that a little bit, because it's not, there's not a kind of one-to-one relationship between hype cycle and popularity in hiring. So, Victor, do you have a specific kind of like, unit or module or whatever that you would propose based on what you think is kind of hot right now?
Yeah, there are. Well, I think it depends on what level. If it's introduction, maybe WebAssembly is one, because this seems to be, there's a lot of people saying this is going to replace container, and so many of those WebAssembly projects is actually not using Kubernetes as orchestrator. I mean, that's going to change, I think, but at least at this point, there's no clear picture where it's going. So if you teach about emerging technology, WebAssembly is probably a good topic.
Yeah, so if I was going to do a module like this on WebAssembly, I would actually do it in kind of not as an emerging technology, in the sense of, here is a little bit of background of what is WASM, right? And then here is a demo of what it does. And the fact that many people consider it emerging tech, like, I wouldn't kind of include that information, if you know what I mean. I would more kind of say, here is a, here's what it is, and here's a tactical example, because otherwise I think people just get frightened of it. But
yeah, if I go back to university, college to learn from professor, I really like to learn why one is called even what infrastructure, ISA. What is ISA, right? Because when we talk about WebAssembly, ISA is so mentioned a lot. So how is it related to RISC-V ISA? How is it related to the virtual machine QMIN, right? Those virtual machine projects. Yeah, maybe from a computer science theoretical perspective, if there's a course, I understand what is ISA, why WebAssembly is considered, why it runs faster and also safer, and what can be done on hardware level to make it even safer, more safer than now. I think it'll be all interesting topic.
So I just got an email. There's like something urgent that's gone wrong with the grant submission that's today. So I'm going to have to drop off of this call. I apologize.
No
But
problem.
happy to follow up and looking forward to talking.
I understand.
All right.
Yeah, feel free to just go back and add to this too. I mean, I think the next step is really just say, okay, let's add some stuff and maybe start making one or two of those modules, you know, whatever we like, as a test of the template.
Sounds good. All right. See you later. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Victor, I took a stab at writing a little bit of one about WASM. Like I'm kind of just adding a proposed list at the end of that document. You know, so if you wanted to maybe write some more up, or you know, if you wanted to take a look at this and see what else you think is missing or add content, you know, that would be cool.
Yeah, if I had anything, it would be a student asking what will be ideally available. So not a.
Well, that's why it's proposed list, right? we don't necessarily need to like do them all. It's more like you know, what are some things that, you know, because what I do think we want to do is like, at least in the stage we're at in developing this plan, for lack of a better term, what we want to do is just tactical pieces that you could kind of drop into your normal curriculum, because we can show something tightly. We can, you know, you're doing a cloud computing class, here is a lecture and an assignment on WASM that you could drop in. Not necessarily, because I think as soon as you start talking about like you know, how WASM interacts with QEMU, right? Like you've turned it into maybe not a class, but certainly 3 or 4 lectures, right? And maybe that's more like when we get to the stage when we're saying, okay, now we're going to build some classes, and one of those classes is, you know, the internals of cloud computing or something, and then the WASM segment of that is, you know, 4 lectures and 2 assignments, you know, and then it kind of fits. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One thing I find, because my son's going to college right now, and he's doing a lot of the online classes. I always when I see how he take classes and, you know, how is it evaluated, and so I always thought, you know, what is the goal for college, right? University. Like for example, if you're doing, going back to deep learning, I think now deep learning, if you still go back to school to do deep learning after you graduate, even during the graduate research, probably you want to really be part of the industry, because in the colleges you no longer have the strongest computing power to be able to do the research you need, right? You don't have the data. So all these courses, at what point should students be considering job? I think that's because college is something that's not, I mean, school is a natural, but college, I think, is not.
Well, don't forget, you have different objectives depending on the nature of the school, right? Like, so a typical college or university is not, you know, a CS degree is not meant to be preparing you for a job in industry, right? It's meant to be preparing you for a choice about where you want to go with computer science. You can go, you know, in kind of in the, and I'm not saying this is a good idea or a bad idea. I'm just saying this is kind of how it's designed, right? Is that it gives you, so once you get that 4-year degree, you're meant to have enough grounding that you can then go do a terminal master's in, you know, like software development, right? Or like, you know, IT management or something like that. Or you could go do like a PhD program and go and do something more along the lines of like algorithmic design. So you know, there's a little bit of a mismatch, I think, between when a student comes to a university for a computer science degree, what they think they're buying is the ability to walk out and get a job afterwards. But what they're actually buying is, like I said, kind of that prep, the groundwork to be able to go and you know, either do like a terminal master's or go learn on the job. But they're not necessarily being prepared fully there. Now, I personally, I think there's some flaws in that design for, in particular, kind of the software developer world. And so there's other alternatives, right? So if you go to like get into like an associate's degree, there's coding camps, there's all kinds of other models that at least claim to prepare you for direct relevance to a job faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, you know what? That's actually one area I'm actually very interested in. I'm not sure it's proper to go over that because I'm a physics major. Actually, I got a master's in physics, didn't finish my PhD. The reason is, actually, my father actually is a physics professor. He told me that go learn physics because that prepares you to learn anything. And the problem is, I spent all those years to learn something that's not quote useful in the real world. So the reason, so that's why the reason I'm bringing it up is, so when I say WebAssembly, is that if you really go deeper into that, is that going to get a student a job, right? So I think eventually it's still about making money, whether it's an academic, being a professor, a researcher, or industry. Still, eventually, it's a way to make money. Although having interest together with it, the job also is the person's interest. That's the ideal situation. So to design modules for the colleges, so what is potential for that to be, even if it's not the current job market, but when that student graduates, when he learned that, what is the potential for him to get into that area as a job, either as just an undergraduate student or as a PhD? I think that probably need to be taken into account. So that's why I'm not sure at WebAssembly, is that too much or is it too little?
Well, I think it depends on how you approach it, right? Like, you don't need to really understand why WebAssembly is better than a container in a sense to be able to understand the best use cases for it at present and how to implement those use cases, right? So what I would propose, at least at this point in kind of the WASM, like hype cycle, right, is like more of a tactical example, because that's where they're going to see it, right? It's going to be your typical, like anybody who's going to, especially somebody who's going to go into industry, where they're going to see WASM right now is going to be kind of aspects on existing software, right? So you want to, centralize your error handling, you want to centralize your auditing, you want to centralize, whatever. And that's going to be where WASM is going to be used. WASM delivered web applications, that are completely compiled and run in the browser. We got a ways to go before we see that, I think.
Yeah, so that's why I use that example, but I think the current job market still look for people who know Kubernetes. So
right.
to be more to target a module for undergraduates, probably to understand a module that teach the Kubernetes fundamentals, or even just the code base, right? Because the code base is so vast. It's really hard to find anyone other than the original architects to know the bottom up. So if there's a course that teach me, okay, this go to GitHub, go to this directory, read this first, then that second, then you will know where the Kubernetes modules are, and then from there you can continue to do your own learning and then understand the whole code base, understand everything, because Kubernetes has everything in it, right? It has this authorization, security stuff, networking, storage, whatever you want almost in that code base. I think that's probably a more practical, at least for the next few years, it will be still where the jobs are.
Yeah, probably true. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think in the next couple of years, you're gonna see WASM, at least as like aspects in Cube, relatively soon. But yeah, I mean, I think there's that's kind of why we need to, that's what we'll do is once we start getting more proposed ideas in there, we'll kind of say, okay, let's prioritize these, right? And so maybe Wasm moves lower down the list. Or also kind of be like, well, there's this one person who really wants to do the Wasm one, so let them go do it. It's not going to hurt anything to have it there, you know, but is it maybe the best? Like if I don't care which one I work on, maybe Wasm's not the best choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Just taking notes, sorry. All right. That's about all I had for today. You know, if unless there was anything else you wanted to add.
I was planning to here to be just the audience.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, I have a syllabus I need to finish cleaning up, so I will take the let's end a little bit early, and I can go work on that.
All right, have a good one.
All right, cool. Talk to you soon.
Later, bye.
Bye.